Yeah.
Not going to be long, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think.
Hmm. Maybe we are the bootloader to all this,
The
We're the ones.
bootloader. I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. We do tend to skew off about, whether of drones and automation goes. And with every release of a new bit of kit,
hmm.
there's there's kind of more tech being thrown into it.
Yeah.
Bigger sensors, the ability to be able to do things that you couldn't do, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Hmm.
So, tech is advancing massively,
Yeah.
massively.
Yeah.
It's frightening at a frightening pace.
Well, I
But
think
hey,
the
keeps
real
us in the job, eh?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, keeps everybody because the most fascinating thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is that a drone, how does it fly? But it flies using GPS. So what is GPS? Well, GPS is another drone at a different altitude, essentially in space,
Yep.
telling this drone where it needs to be. And a lot of people don't think about it. That's a robot speaking to another robot, um, telling it's where its position is
Telling
at.
it where it's located.
Yeah. Um,
Oh,
but hey, it's all under our control, at least for now. So there's
at
no.
least for now. Yeah, we're going back to the whole Terminator thing. Shh, I don't want to talk about it. Hello again.
Hello,
What's
episode
this?
4.
Episode 4.
Yeah,
Episode 4.
can't believe
As we
4 weeks in.
4 weeks in of our podcast, which we can now call it, because it's not only it not only goes out on YouTube, it also goes out on all your podcast directories. I'm not even
There
going
we
to
go.
name them this week. I'm just going to say it's available on.
You can't name them, Alex. There's just too many.
There are
It's
too
just
many.
yeah. But Apple, Spotify, pretty much.
You've named them. You've done it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a good few out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are available on all your podcast directories and repositories. I never liked the word repositories. Sounds
Mm.
too much like the other word, which I'm not going to mention.
Yeah. I fully understand.
You know which word I'm talking
I know
about as
which word you're
well.
talking
Yeah,
about. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So
Right.
anyway, less
So
less of that.
yeah.
So Mavic 3 Enterprise. That's what we're talking about this week.
Yeah, Mavic 3 Enterprise and Mavic 3 T, which
So
is
yeah, it's the Mavic. There's two, isn't there? There's the
yeah,
Mavic 3E and the Mavic
T.
3T.
Bit of a mouthful, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. DJI do like to mix it up a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
So the interesting news is DJI has released yet another drone, as people probably know, and that's the Mavic 3E. Not just the Mavic 3, Mavic 3E. And E is for enterprise.
yep.
So it seems like there seems to be more and more of a focus on enterprise drones and enterprise level drones sort of
Yeah,
being
I mean,
separate category to
they
normal
do. They
drones.
they tend to do this. They release the consumer one first.
Yeah.
So you obviously had the Mavic 3 and the Mavic 3 Cine,
Mhm.
which were last year or the year before that. I can't remember, maybe the year before that. And then they developed their enterprise equipment and released those
Yeah.
shortly afterwards, which is what they've done in this case, and which they've done with most of their enterprise level kit,
Yeah.
including the Mavic 2 as well. That was the same.
Yeah.
So what is it all about? What
Yeah.
is the
So
Mavic 3E all about?
yeah, it's about so many things. The challenge I always find with DJI is that, on one hand, they release drones at a shipping pace which even a software company can't keep up with. I mean,
Yeah,
drones are coming out faster than people can use them or people can actually integrate with them, but they're coming out, and it's just this amazing shipping velocity that they've got. And they seem to be reusing components where you sort of like see, there's a drone that comes out, like there's a bigger drone with sensors on board and RTK units and cameras and whatnot, and then they
yep.
come up with a smaller version with the same possibilities but now in a smaller drone,
Yeah.
which obviously opens up a lot of
I mean, if
possibilities.
if you look at the comparison between the M300 and the M30,
Hmm.
obviously the M300 is a big old aircraft,
Hmm.
capable of carrying different payloads, long flight times. But then you get the 30,
Hmm.
which is obviously a smaller aircraft. It
Hmm.
looks like a Mavic on steroids. it doesn't have the interchangeable camera, but it's still more than capable of doing everything you need it to do. Obviously, we're not talking about the 30 today. Maybe we can do another podcast on the 30. So yeah, the DJI do release stuff at a rapid pace. I mean, the progression from the original Mini right through to the very popular now Mini 3. And I think they're even going to release a Mini 3 special edition, which is minus the front 2 sensors. So it brings the price down. They just, and obviously you've got the Avatar or the Avatar, depending on which way you want to say it, which is their FPV rig. So they're flooding the market, which is great for operators, not so good for your bank balance.
It's I guess it depends, right? Like, so if you have the use case that justifies a new drone, and because the drone sort of opens up new possibilities, makes the workflows more efficient, and you've got higher quality data, then maybe it works, right? Like maybe you just have to upgrade the hardware because you just need that much more efficiency. If you're not at that point yet, then you can very much work with not the most recent model and still get really high quality work done. And it's one of those things where having the latest and greatest is not always the best thing.
No, you'll find a lot of operators, I talk for myself, I mean, I know of other operators as well, that won't go out and buy a DJI bit of kit brand new off the shelf straight away. Because it's gonna be software flaws, right? I mean, I still fly my Mavic 2 Pro, and it's more than capable for everything that I need it to do. We fly it in a test environment, and it's great. So I'm sure the Mavic 3E and the Mavic 3T, they do have huge advances over the Mavic 2 Enterprise.
So let's talk about them. So let's see so let's start with the hardware. So let's what's changed in the hardware capabilities. We know the Mavic, it's a Mavic, so it's definitely portable.
Still got the fold up design, very, very portable. Camera has changed. We know the camera's changed. So when the Mavic 3 was originally released, both the Cine and the standard, they changed the lens to a micro four thirds lens over the 1-inch sensor. It's still 20 megapixels. But the micro four thirds will give you a larger frame.
It's a bigger sensor. It allows for more light capture, more information captured for the same megapixel. Leading to better results overall. Depends on the use case, of course. I mean, I guess we are very biased towards mapping and inspection and maybe even cinematography use cases when we're talking here. But for some use cases you need that extra bit, but others maybe you can get away with.
Obviously it's a micro four thirds. It is fixed, so obviously you can't change the size of the lens, so to speak. But in all respects, both the original Inspire Pro and the Inspire 2 both have the X5 and the X5S respectively. Both have a micro four thirds sensor.
Right.
You're now shrinking that down into a smaller, more portable aircraft.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Mavic 3E also has a mechanical shutter,
which has been the big kind of that plus the camera interval being at 0.7 seconds. Is it? I think.
I believe so. I'd have to look at the specs, which I have up here in front of me. I would have to have a look. I'm drinking coffee as well. I thought, why not?
I think it's 0.7 seconds, and then you've got your mechanical shutter, which just makes it a great addition. It'll make it a mapping machine essentially.
Totally. So, but there is an added bonus, which is the same with the original ones, is that it also has an integrated telephoto lens. So you've got obviously the wide lens, which is the 4x3 or the micro four thirds CMOS sensor, mechanical, at the bottom, and at the top you've got tele lens,
right?
Which it's not 20 megapixel like the micro four thirds. It is only 12, but it does have a 56 times hybrid zoom.
Interesting. And do you think they've done that for some specific applications, or?
Well, bizarrely enough, it is exactly the same on the standard Mavic 3 and Cine as well. You have it. I mean, from previous experience, filming with a zoom lens is hideous.
Yes.
You
Everything
get a
moves too
lot of
much. Yeah.
yeah, you just get a lot of movement, and it's just not nice. I would say that is probably it's based for photography
Hmm.
through and through,
Hmm.
and perfect in a survey and inspection environment.
Mm. So
Absolutely perfect.
if you don't want to get up close, you can probably zoom in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
Or you can do your mapping run,
Hmm.
and you can go, hang on a minute, I spotted something going on with the chimney. Let's just zoom in and have a look, as opposed to flying your drone even closer to have a look,
Yeah.
or waiting till you get back with the data to blow the picture up to have a look. Because it's 20 megapixel, you can. Why not
Mm.
do it in the field? You can just sit
Yeah.
the drone up, zoom in, and go, oh yeah, there's some bricks missing, or the pot's missing off the top, or
Yeah.
gosh, I'll get a photo, job done.
Yeah.
So yeah, the zoom capability, very handy,
Yeah.
I
And
would say.
the wide angle lens. I mean, the main sort of camera kind of changes with the mechanical shutter and the 0.7 second capture interval. Should we try and explain why that matters and sort of why is it important? Because I think there's just it's great that it has a mechanical shutter, but so many people are still kind of they don't really understand the kind of
Why?
why behind it. Um,
Go on
and
then.
it's the
Do
glow.
it. Do it.
It's just well, I think it's kind of like I think what's the best way of describing this? It's kind of like I mean, if you think about a camera taking images, um,
Yep.
you have a camera that can take images in one shot and having sort of like one complete picture formed in an instant,
Yep.
which would be more of a global shutter as they call it. Or you can have a camera that can basically take images in a kind of line by line fashion. So it's sort of like you can think of it as, you've got your scanner, which is doing line by line stuff, or you can think of
Yep.
it like an instant image. And so if you have something that is the mechanical shutter typically tends to be global. Hopefully it's a global shutter. I'll have to check this. And so what that means is that since it's not electronic and it's not doing the line by line thing, it's doing the one instant capture. When
Yep.
you're mapping, you have less chances of motion blur, distortion, any kind of
Correct.
issues. So yeah, as a mapping product, it makes more sense to have this mechanical shutter and the camera interval because that then dictates how fast you can fly to do
It's
this.
similar to the Phantom 4 Pro, right? That had a mechanical shutter as well,
Yeah,
which lots of people used for mapping.
yeah.
And of course, with the increased sensor size, it being micro four thirds,
Hmm.
it also has improved low light performance
Right. Okay.
because
Yeah.
letting more light into the lens.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So you
So
capture more information. Yeah.
that is
Um,
correct.
and obviously the lighting also affects the sort of the shutter interval that you can have because there's all these exposure values. If you have really low lighting conditions, you would have to have the camera needs to open for a longer period of time to let enough light
Yep.
in to have the
Yep.
scene illuminated in the right way. And so if you have a very you kind of need to open the camera enough to be able to get enough light in. But then you want to be able to close it fast enough so that you can kind of carry on mapping and capturing data.
Yep.
And so it's a sort of a balance. I mean, we've done videos before on sort of the optimal flight speed and the lighting conditions, how they affect the drone mapping speed. Because if you think about two images that need to be taken, like in a normal mapping,
Yep.
in our backgrounds, we've got points that represent pictures where they need to be taken, and there's an overlap and there's a distance, and the drone's flying at X meters per second between these 2 points. And if the drone flies too fast between these
You're
2 points,
gonna get motion blur between the shots.
yeah, you're gonna
Whereas a
get
mechanical
motion.
shutter should eliminate that.
Yeah, but not even motion blur. I think you probably won't be able to take the images. So you imagine that, like, if you're flying too fast, the camera is open to take the image, but you've already flown past the next point that you need to
Yeah,
take the image at. So basically the camera can't keep up.
it
Yeah,
can't cope. It can't
yeah.
cope. So yeah, I mean, so that's the Mavic 3E,
Hmm.
and then you've got the Mavic 3T,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
which I would assume
It's
stands for thermal.
thermal. Yes. Hmm.
It's easier for DJI to just chuck a T on the end and
Yeah.
make sure people assume.
Yeah.
So That one doesn't have the
Mhm.
micro four thirds.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's got again, reading my spec sheet, which is up here.
Mhm.
Wide has the equivalent focal length of 24 millimeters,
Mhm.
and is a 48 megapixel camera.
Right. And the camera is radiometric, I would imagine. The thermal.
Well, it actually has three cameras. So
Right.
you've got your standard wide photography camera, which is a
Mm.
48 megapixel camera. Then
Mhm.
you have the same zoom as the
Mhm.
Mavic 3E.
Mhm.
Weirdly enough, on their specs, on the Mavic 3E, they call it tele, but on the
Mhm.
Mavic 3T, they call it zoom. But it's
Right.
the same camera, exactly the same. I don't know why they've named it differently.
Mm.
So that's got the equivalent focal length of 162 mil.
Right.
Again, 12 megapixel, 56 times hybrid zoom, they call
Yeah.
it.
So that must
Just
be for search and rescue operations, predominantly aimed at that market, maybe.
again, I would have thought so.
Mhm.
And then they've got the third camera, which is obviously the thermal, which is where the T comes in.
Mhm.
That is a 40 mil focal length
Mhm.
and a resolution of 640 by 512.
Yeah, I mean, thermal cameras obviously have low res. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just a known issue. I think one of the challenges we find if you use a thermal camera for something like roof inspections, you need to fly that much. The footprint that you have on the ground is different compared to when you're flying with a visual camera. So
Yep.
sometimes you need to be able to fly closer to be able to get the right resolution in the sort of like the data,
Yeah.
and then you have to fly further away for the visual. So I wonder if you're going to see two different mapping modes, different altitudes, for something like if people are going to use it for roof jobs. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I know that the M2EA has been quite useful in the solar jobs, solar farm jobs.
Yeah, I should think it'll. I mean, I should think it'll probably be a direct replacement, right? For
Mm,
that's the way DJI are looking at it. It will be eventually a direct replacement to the Mavic 2 line.
mm,
They'll outmode it and it'll become the Mavic 3 line.
yeah.
Um, Again, with the I think with the Mavic 2, they had packages with add-on parts, additional bits,
Mm-hmm.
which again is the same for the Mavic 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could obviously got
The the RTK.
RTK unit,
Mm-hmm.
a loudspeaker.
A loudspeaker. Mm.
Yeah, so you can shout at people while you're flying
So
around.
you can be precise in your position. You can precise at which people to shout at.
Well, yeah, you can use your RTK to mobilize it and get to where you need to be, and then you can shout at those people underneath you and tell them that you are there. Not that they wouldn't be able to hear you in the first place. And then obviously you've got the RTK mobile base station, which is actually
Yeah.
the DRTK2 mobile base station, which is obviously
So
available with other products as well.
yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
So essentially, I guess the competitor it would serve as a direct competitor to the Phantom 4 RTK in some sense, right? Because
Thought so.
that's the bulky RTK drone for mapping that now potentially, I guess, the Mavic 3 is going to sort of cannibalize and take over, kind of,
I would have thought what will happen now is now they've introduced RTK to the Mavic 3. I should think the Phantom 4 will go end of line.
Yeah, especially with the mechanical shutter being the last straw in some sense, which was one of the things people are
Yeah.
holding on to. Like, I need my Phantom because it has the mechanical shutter. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's what they'll probably do. And again, it would make sense. Mavic 3, it's like the rest of the Mavic range, it's a foldable, portable aircraft.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
You
is
know,
great. It still
yeah.
can't compete with the M300 with the P1 sensor. Like, there are
No,
still sort of bigger drones with interchangeable lenses that
yeah,
can.
there's definitely still use cases for the bigger, the bigger enterprise aircraft. People aren't going to start getting rid of their M300s because the Mavic 3 Enterprise has come out.
Yeah.
If they were going to do that, they'd have gone M30, right?
Yeah.
So the Mavic 3 Enterprise is it's obviously going to be not as powerful as the M300. The M300 is an absolute monster. Two batteries, loads. It's got redundancy. It's got sensors everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple payloads, RTK already built in. and it will be able to resist a lot more adverse weather
Yeah.
than the M3. That's a
M3E is
point.
M3E is very hard to say because 3 and E just
It just all all
yeah.
blends together. I'm just going to have a quick
M3.
look at the specs
Mhm.
because I want to know if this thing has an IP rating.
No, I don't think any of the
So,
new Mavic 3 ones have IP rated. They're not IP rated.
again, you
But
see,
feel
there's your
yeah.
advantage with the. Does the M30 is the M30 IP rated?
I believe it is. I'm not. I'm
Okay,
sure. I'm sure about M300.
the M300 is
For sure.
IP rated. I can't
Yeah.
remember what IP it is, but it's definitely IP rated.
Yeah.
But as far as I think you're right. As far as I can see here,
I don't think the M3, M3E and M3T have not had the IP rating.
I don't see any IP rating here
Which
at
makes
all.
sense. I think they've introduced it as a competitor to the Phantom 4 line
Yeah,
and their Mavic 2 line, as opposed to competing with the Mavic, the Matrice 300 line. And, they're just completely different markets, different applications,
they are. They are
different
indeed.
use cases. But so much of everything really boils down to, I mean, if you think about it, I think a lot of the drone choices boils down to the sensor they carry, right? I mean, we've been talking about cameras for longer than we've been talking about the drone, and
Yeah,
it's just like a lot of it is what is the sensor it can fly, and can it fly reliably? Because
yeah, yeah. I mean, there is a substantial leap for those people that are in the know, I guess. There is a substantial leap from the Mavic 2 with its 1 inch sensor to the Mavic 3, whatever model you go for, to the Mavic 3 with its Micro Four Thirds sensor. Obviously, the Mavic 3T being set aside because that doesn't have it. You know, you're going to get a lot more saturation of shot. The shot's going to be larger because the sensor's larger. Obviously they're still 20 megapixel.
Yeah.
It just depends what you need it for.
Yeah.
There will be users out, operators out there that will just go, well, I'll just stick with my Mavic 2. Does the job, does what I want it to do.
100%. Yeah.
Are my clients happy with the results?
Yeah. That's what matters at the end of the day. I mean, the drone or the camera, dramera, it's the only
Dramera.
There we go. Quite a new word.
Book
It's
title.
book title for this week.
Dramera. Yeah.
Dramera.
The Dramera.
Dramera. We need to trademark that ASAP.
Trademark it quick.
No. So I think it's interesting. If the use case doesn't need, four third sensor, it's happy. You can do it with the 1 inch. Then that's completely fine. And if you don't need RTK for the use case, if it's an inspection use case as opposed to mapping, then that's completely fine. Don't get an RTK. And everything you add to your operation also adds operational inefficiency that you have to then get efficient to be able to get the same ROI. If you're using RTK for an inspection job, which doesn't need RTK and just needs you to take the pictures in the right places, maybe you need a 3D model, but maybe you don't want it to be accurate in geolocation, so you just added more kit to your field equipment.
I mean, I guess that the RTK unit is a bolt-on, so there is the choice there. Depending on your your work environment or how your business progresses, or what your stakeholder requires of you. If it changes, you can always go out and get that RTK unit and bolt it on. That's the beauty of having the bolt-on.
It's the modularity, right? So it's Lego blocks. You could put together your ideal solution for the ideal use case.
And if you want to shout at people, buy the speaker.
It did happen during not so long ago, during was it in COVID, when there's countries around the world where they're using drones to basically tell people to stay inside,
back in your houses,
which was a bit of a dystopian
a bit scary, really.
A
bit kind of it's sort of shifting towards Blade Runner-y, sort of Ready Player One kind of stuff. Frightening.
The
future is too close. We mentioned Terminator 2, I think, last week. It's
Yeah.
not going to be long.
Yeah.
Not going to be long, I don't think.
Maybe we are the bootloader to all this,
The
We're the ones.
bootloader. I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah. We do tend to skew off about, whether of drones and, automation goes. And with every release of a new bit of kit, there's kind of more tech being thrown into it. Bigger sensors, the ability to be able to do things that you couldn't do, say 3, 4, 5 years ago. So, tech is advancing massively.
Yeah.
Massively. It's frightening at a frightening pace.
Well, I
But
think
hey,
the
keeps
real
us in the job, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, keeps everybody because the most fascinating thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is that a drone, how does it fly? But it flies using GPS. So what is GPS? Well, GPS is another drone at a different altitude, essentially in space, telling this drone where it needs to be. And a lot of people don't think about it. That's a robot speaking to another robot, telling it where its position is
Telling
at.
it where it's located.
Yeah. But hey, it's all under our control, at least for now. So there's
at least for now. Yeah, we're going back to the whole Terminator thing. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's scary.
Right.
So I guess that shifts us on to software.
Yes, absolutely.
Kind of a bit of a leap. We're talking about the future and software and how how software products can integrate with these drones or flying machines. So
yeah,
what software works?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges that DJI has created, and I don't know if this is a part of this was their sort of, if it was a strategic thing that they've done, or if it's just something that's an emergent property of what they've done. But essentially, what they've last few months to years, I think a lot of the drones that have come out, you've heard in the market, the problem has been there's been no SDK or proper integration tools. Now with the Mavic 3. The Mavic 3 still doesn't have an SDK, and the Mavic Mini 3 also doesn't have an SDK. We know that with the Mavic 3E there is an SDK, and so the day this was released, our support inbox exploded with the number of requests, and a lot of people were like, "Well, there is an SDK, so why don't you integrate yet?" And so the challenge always is, knowing the details.
Yeah.
So for anyone that's sort of listening or watching, I think I'd like to explain what is the issue with sort of these SDKs. So a lot of these SDKs, software development kits, the challenge is that you have to use these tools to integrate with the drone, and there are different versions of these tools. And what DJI has done for the Mavic 3 and even the Mavic 330, M30, sorry.
30. So many different letters and names and numbers.
That's also becoming quite difficult to keep track of.
It is.
The M30 and the M3E, they both share the same SDK or the tool set, but that tool set is specific for those two drones, and they do not support all the drones that have come before these two drones.
That's right.
And then there is a SDK 416 to be precise, which supports all the other drones that have come before it, but doesn't support these two new drones. So as software developers, we are kind of, we've got to use this tool for these drones, and we've got to use that tool for those drones, and we can't make one product easily to integrate
easily
with everything.
accessible to cover everything. This is it, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, having said that, we'll get there. There are ways for us to be able to do it. It's just not an overnight process.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, it will happen. It's just it
all takes time, folks.
It takes time.
It does.
And for something as critical as flight, drone operations, we definitely don't want to rush these integrations.
No.
We want to take the right amount of time, the appropriate amount of time to get some of these things done. But having said that, there are still ways to use your drone with software.
There are. And we do have a post on that, and we will have a video on that shortly as well, which we will link down here and in our bump about our podcast, but there are ways you can use your unsupported drone with hammer missions.
Yeah, or any
I'm not going to
software.
explain it now because we'll be here for ages, but
Yeah,
we'll put a link to the post.
yeah,
Maybe even on the video somewhere up here we could link to the post.
yeah.
But there are doing it until we have integrated all of DJI's efforts into our software, which as you've said, Varun, it will take time.
Yeah.
There are ways of still using hammer with the unsupported aircraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, if someone's thinking about upgrading, that could be a factor, whether you want to upgrade to the Mavic 3E yet when not a lot of software supports it, or do you want to wait it out till, you are, I think, looking at your use case end to end and looking at different components of it, whether the software supports it, whether, your insurance is covering it, whether, everything that you're doing now, this fundamental block, this changing of the drone is still supporting. It's being supported. So yeah, we've had, what was I think the last project we were involved in was with a Mavic 3 cell tower, and it was captured manually.
It was indeed, and we've seen the results.
Yeah,
and they're impressive.
They are. Yeah,
they are very, very impressive.
Yeah.
So I guess we're on kind of, we've spoken about software and integration and how we will be integrating it, but there are ways of already integrating it, as we have proved. Maybe we can put a link to that if that's project shareable. We could link to that project. Obviously, we'd have to ask our client, but I'm sure we'll that up. So I guess that shifts us on to pricing.
Yeah.
I had just actually, while you were talking, I was just having a look at the pricing behind it. I'm just trying to find I can see Mavic 3s here. I'm just trying to find enterprise prices. Give me a sec. It should be a price. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Mavic 3 Enterprise. Looking at about £3,000 to £4,000 thereabouts.
Yeah.
There are obviously varying prices, and obviously you can, there's extra bits you can add.
Yeah.
But you're looking around sort of 3.5, something like that.
So it's cheaper than a Phantom 4 RTK. Because I think that one was.
How much was that when it came out?
I think it was around 5,000, 6,000 mark, I think. So it's definitely cheaper than the Phantom 4 RTK, which makes sense because they would want to have a better product at a lower price to attract anyone who hasn't bought a Phantom 4 RTK yet.
Yep.
But I think what you have to factor into that £3,000 cost is the cost of software not fully supporting it yet, and the inefficiencies of it being a new drone, and the risk of everything around a new.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thermal is obviously slightly more expensive. You're looking at kind of between this sort of $4.5 and $5,000 mark for the thermal. That's just some of the prices I'm getting up here. But you compare that with like the M30, Matrice 30. The Matrice, you're looking at nearly $9,000.
Yeah, the Matrice obviously will put you in a completely different spectrum. Yeah. So that makes sense. So it really is. It's more expensive than the Mavic 2 range, but it's cheaper than the Mavic. We're not all encompassing Mavic 2, but the Mavic 2 Pro range. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And then the Mavic, it's cheaper than the Phantom 4, and also a lot cheaper than the Matrice 300. And there's no reason why people can't have both, right? So people could also have a small drone and a big drone, and have them for different jobs. We've seen
a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I know operators out there that are running a successful survey business with a Mini 3.
Yeah, because
it's just so it's usable. It's so, I think, it doesn't matter what drone you've got. It all depends on. We come back to this. It all depends on the data.
And the use case.
There you go, and the use case.
Yeah.
So
all right.
There you go. So
and on that
note,
that
is our little brief review, I guess, or spec review of the Mavic 3E and T. I've yet to fly either of them, so I'd like to
Oh,
would
it's
like
Mavic
to
3.
fly.
It's Mavic 3 ET. I've just
No,
read.
Mavic 3E or the Mavic 3T.
Right.
There's
Okay.
no ET.
Hey, there's no
I
ET.
suppose there. Well, it doesn't list it as
Do you think
ET.
that was
I
was do you
I
think there
think
was
I think
something behind it, like, you know,
I think that was done on purpose. Can you
yeah.
imagine that? I've got the Mavic 3 ET, the alien aircraft. Um, so yeah. So I've yet to fly either of them. I've flown the Mavic 3, the consumer one, the cinema style one. But I haven't flown any of the E or T yet. So that'd be quite interesting to get hold of one of those and give it a shot.
The moment we jump on the integration bandwagon, then we will basically get one of those drones and put them in the air, and then probably also showcase some of the data sets that we collect from it. Yeah,
that we will. So there you go, folks.
Brilliant.
That's another week done. I don't know if this one was shorter, or I think we got everything in the can. So as per usual, you can drop us some comments. You can subscribe. You can get hold of us on team@hammermissions.com. And we're also podcasting as well. So you can get us in all your favorite podcast directories. So there you go. Good stuff,
Brilliant.
Varun.
Good stuff, Alex.
I know you're out and about this afternoon, so I'll let you go.
Brilliant.
And I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, catch you soon. Thanks,
Nice
Alex.
one.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.